how the Rams could get even more cap space, and 3 impact edge rushers that could be Rams next season. That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramblin'? Welcome to the episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, we're so close to 12,000 subscribers. So if you haven't yet, do us a favor and join the party. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, hit that like button, and drop all your takes down below. What do you want to see the Rams do with their cap space this offseason? My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I'm covering LA sports for over a decade. SI 24/7 Sports, Dodgers Nation, now the Rams 4 Locked On. And as always, I'm joined by the Rams pre-half and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station, ESPN 710 LA. He just finished his 8th season covering your Los Angeles Rams. Also, just some really awesome interviews with Steve Avila. You can check that out on the other YouTube channels for where he works at ESPN, so definitely find those. And on today's show, we're talking about the Rams cap space. What will they do if they finally have money to spend this offseason, but where will they spend it? But first, this episode of Locked On Rams is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnNFL to get started. So, Travis, they got money to spend. They got around $40 million to spend in cap space. Sean McVay was excited about it. He was a little shocked by how much they have to spend considering what happened last offseason. But the question now is, where do they spend that money? Well, before we get into that, I just want to talk about how you could actually get even more money. The first thing you could consider doing is you could restructure Matthew Stafford's deal. Mm-hmm. And if you look at some of the cap hits, yes, they are significant, but I think that they are something that you could consider because you know you're not going to move off of him, right? Another thing you could do is you could restructure Rob Havenstein's deal. So there are ways you get even more than $40 million, close to $43 million to spend. But the most important thing is you got money to spend. They got to find ways to spend it.
I admire your restraint in being able to open today's Locked On Ram podcast and not talk about Shohei Ohtani hitting a home run in spring training. I just want to tell you that that's a very job well done that you were able to compartmentalize. It proves that you are a professional, if nothing else, Doug. That your Dodgers Nation core did not just jump to the front of the line, because that's kind of where I wanted to start it. That Ohtani
start there.
Yeah, his first.
I've been talking about it for the last 24 hours, so I thought I might switch gears just a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, no, I get it. I admire your professionalism. Yes, the Rams will have money to spend. It's a new phenomenon for them over the last couple of seasons. You mentioned the interview that I did with Steve Avila the other night, and we also spoke with Kevin Demoff, and he was talking about how excited Sean McVay was that they have money to spend for the first time in a long time, and that he went from, wow, I can't believe we have somewhere between $40 and $50 million to spend. How do we get to 60? And what did we have last year? And it was negative $2 million. This is new ground for the Rams to have a little flexibility, to have multiple roads that they can go down, to be able to restructure some things like you were talking about to create some additional cap space. And this is, I think, why the vibe in that room that I was at the other night was so positive. And understanding it was, a Rams season ticket event holder. It was a pep rally, for lack of a better description, but it didn't feel forced. It didn't feel artificial. And a big reason why is because there is money to spend, and there are some players that you can target, or there's draft picks. There's just so many different options available to the Rams for the first time in a long time. It's incredibly exciting.
Yeah, no, I listened to your interview with Demoff. I thought that was really funny line where he's talking about McVay, and he's like 50, 60, 70 million, and they're telling him, hey, look, why don't you, you got a payday loan, and he's out here trying to buy a Bentley. Why can't it be a Ford or a Toyota, maybe even a Range Rover? So, yeah, I love that mentality, right? Hey, like at Wall Street said, greed is good.
Right. No, it is. And look, the window's open again, right? That I think it's open again a little more quickly than maybe even the most optimistic Rams fans were talking about. And their options are multiple. Do you want to draft a guy? Great. You got picks to do it. Do you want to trade the picks away to go get a proven NFL player? Great. You can do it. Do you want to go sign a player in free agency? Great. You can do it. Do you want to kick it even more open by restructuring some of those deals like you're talking about? Great. You can do it. They did not have, think about what they did last year coming into camp where they had, 100 people in camp. There was something like 40 first-year players that showed up in camp. They had 14 draft picks. All of them made the team out of camp. This is going to be a more experienced team, probably a more veteran-laden team, a team with bigger expectations, and it happened in the space of one season. It's remarkable.
Yeah, that's why last year was so important, right? I mean, if last year they absolutely tanked, we might be looking at a down to the studs type rebuild if they didn't hit on any of those draft picks and some of these veterans didn't come back strong. But now, like you said, you pry that window open. You say, okay, we can be contenders, especially when you look at the current state of the NFC. And like I was saying earlier, with Matthew Stafford, the fact that they are fully committed to him. They are fully committed to him through that entire contract. And if you did restructure his deal this offseason, you could free up almost $20 million for 2024. It raises cap hit from over $50 million to over $60 million in 2025 and from $49.5 million to almost $60 million in 2026. That's an option. And you look at Rob Havenstein. Rob Havenstein, he signed a 3-year extension before the 2022 season, and that the contract goes through 2025. And with that deal, you got 2 void years in 26 and 27. Anytime you see those void years, that's a sign that, okay, that sets us up to possibly restructure that deal. Right. So that would raise his cap hit from 11.4 to 13.9 million. And you put that dead cap charge at 5.4 million in 2027. So all this is just to say that they have money, but they could get even more money depending on how aggressive they do want to get this offseason, depending on how much they do want to address some needs if they don't feel like they have enough to do all that.
I think you're right. And I think you said something that's incredibly important, that the season that Matthew Stafford just had and the fact that the Rams are in the position that they are collectively as a team and they're competitive again, it's incredibly clarifying. Right? That this is not a, hey, what are we going to do at quarterback? Because we know that in this league, if the quarterback position is not right, nothing else really matters. If that's not NFL caliber play, what are we doing here? And the answer is not much, right? It is incredibly clarifying that Stafford is healthy, that he is still an elite thrower of the football. We saw it last year, that he still has a fire and a desire to continue to play in the NFL, which he clearly does. So you can kind of work with the math a little bit, that if you want to take the hit now, do you want to take it later? Do you want to move the money to sooner? Do you want to move it to later? You can do these things because you know number 9 is going to be your guy for at least a few more years. Whereas coming into this season, I don't know if that was the case. I know that that's what they were saying, but they went to him and they offered to restructure, and he declined to do it, and everything that comes along with it. Well, now maybe knowing that, hey, look, we got a Kyren Williams, we got a Puka Nacua, Aaron Donald is still at a high level, we got some draft picks, that I do want to be here for a little while longer. I do want to make another Super Bowl run in a Rams uniform. It allows you to go allocate that money to other places if that's in fact what you want to do.
Yeah, and isn't it amazing how the further we get removed from the end of the season, the more we feel better about it? I mean, you just mentioned Kyren Williams. I haven't even talked about Kyren Williams that much, and you can almost see him as a rookie-ish, as someone that's hit is going to be a big part of your future. Yeah. This guy's a top 5 to 10 running back in his sophomore season, and all those other pieces they hit on. But yeah, I think for me, look, we've lived through the FM picks era, right? I think this is the, hey, it ain't my money era, right? Okay. Go spend and try to maximize this window, and you win another Super Bowl out of this core. The dead cap hits, all the restructured contracts. Look, you buy yourself another 5 to 10 years if you get 2 Super Bowls in 10 years, okay? So that's kind of where they're at.
No, absolutely. Look, when you do what they've done, I asked Kevin Demoff this the other day, and I said, could you have asked for more since coming back to Los Angeles than what you've put on the board? And his response was, well, we didn't love going 4-12 in the first year. Okay, fine. I get it. But the other 7, you've been to the Super Bowl twice. You've been to the playoffs 5 times. You've been bad once since then. You've been somewhere. You've built this stadium. You've got some traction and some roots in town as kind of a marquee franchise. And what I'm talking about there is basically you've got 3 here in town, and you're trying to punch your ticket for 4. You've got the Lakers. You've got the Dodgers. You've got USC football. sometimes. And now you got to find a way to get on the level with those other organizations. And they're right on the precipice, and they've done it in less than 10 years. It's remarkable.
They've done that. And also, you had to list the biggest things that have happened in LA football this offseason, number one would be the Chargers getting Jim Harbaugh. So maybe that a little bit kind of sparked something within that building. But we know that they know how to win. But coming up next, how will they spend those funds? We have 3 edge rushers the Rams could consider and should consider. That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
Let's talk a little bit about FanDuel, D-Mac, right? Get your buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers, this is for you. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. So you place a $5 bet. If it hits, if it wins, you get $150 more to play with in bonus bets that you can go turn into who knows what, right? And of course, you can bet on all of your favorite NBA players. You can bet on all of your favorite NBA teams with quick bets. There are live same game parlays, which are a ton of fun. There are exclusive prop bets if you want to get a little bit more, goofy with it. I love those kind of bets as well. And of course, there's a whole lot more at FanDuel. Here's how you do it. You go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and you shoot your shot. Let me give it to you again. FanDuel.com/lockedon to get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Also, D-Mac, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp, right? Let me ask you a question. If you just had an extra hour, 1 extra hour a day, what would you do with it? How would you spend that extra hour? Would you want to read a little bit more? Would you want to maybe sleep a little more? Would you want to go for a run? Do you want to go hang out with your friends? The best way to find out what's important to you, arguably, is therapy. So if you've been thinking about therapy, give BetterHelp a try. Let them find out what it is that makes you go. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire and you can get matched with a licensed therapist. And if that therapist and you don't exactly hit it off, you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. How good is that? So learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon.
And we are off running here on Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday, free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I also want to send a special shout out to our every listeners out there. Even though the season has ended, you guys are still watching, you're still listening, and we appreciate that. And you can join the Everyday Listeners Club too, guys. You just got to watch, listen to every single episode, and then you won't miss a thing about your Los Angeles Rams. Now, Travis here in our second segment. We're going to talk about the edge rusher position. It is a position of need. They did draft Byron Young in the last draft. He definitely had a very promising rookie year. He still is a very raw, athletic edge rusher. I don't think he's the answer to that position. I think he's going to help. And then Hoyt, we know that experiment should have ended a long time ago. They absolutely need to add to the edge rusher spot. And yes, we've talked about the draft. You could absolutely possibly get a Jared Verse out of Florida State. Maybe if you want to kind of draft up a Dallas Turner out of Alabama, then you got Liatu Latu, who's a sociology major at UCLA. I don't want to throw that out there, give him some extra love. I'm just saying. But yeah, you could go that route. But you know where I stand. I've said it. I planted my flag on this on the show. I think the edge rusher spot is an area where you have to go out there and spend money on it, whether it be a trade, whether it be a veteran that you can pick up, or you can spend big on it. Now, the first guy that, of course, Rams are going to bring up anytime you talk about edge rusher is Brian Burns of the Carolina Panthers. And he had a really strong finish to last season, finished with a 74.1 PFF grade, had 9 sacks, 12.5 sacks in 2022. Wasn't the best first part of the season, but one, he's on a bad team, right? Yeah. And that's always a factor. And still, how about this? The Rams liked him. And anytime the Rams like a player and wanted him bad and were willing to give 2 first-round picks for him a couple of seasons ago, I think there's still going to be some interest there.
Yeah, I do too. I think that's one of those guys that the Rams have identified as somebody that would do really well in their organization, that would be able to kind of take his game to a whole nother level. He's a very good player, but like you mentioned, D-Mac, being on a bad team it's sometimes it can be a little hard to evaluate what it would look like on a good team. But I know this. I know anybody that plays on a defense with Aaron Donald, and part of what you do is go get the quarterback, you're going to be better at it because number 99's drawing a whole bunch of attention. You're going to be better at it because Kobe Turner had 9 sacks. You're going to be better at it because Byron Young had 8 sacks. So if all of a sudden you throw another guy in there that at least you have to account for at worst, you got something that can happen. I think there are a couple of things here. There are 2 things that are coming together. Number one, I think you take the best player available that when you're looking at my philosophy when it comes to this stuff is you have your big board, right? You have every player that's eligible to be drafted and you rank them not necessarily just by position, but who is the best guy that I think will have the best NFL career among these guys. The top of that list, take that person. Figure it out from there, even if it's with the exception of quarterback. Quarterback is a little bit of it, but everything else there, I'm going to go there. So that's number one. Number 2 is there are basically 4 positions on the field that you have to have right. The quarterback has to have right. The guy that protects the quarterback has to be right. And we're talking offensive line, specifically your left tackle. The guy that gets the quarterback, hello, this is what we're talking about right now. And the guy that catches the ball from the quarterback. Everything else you can figure out. So if those 2 things are coming together at the same time, which is what we're talking about, this is where a guy like Burns becomes attractive. This is where a first-round draft pick of somebody who can go get the quarterback becomes attractive. An offensive lineman who can slide right in becomes attractive. A wide receiver who maybe can be the third of your 3-headed monster becomes attractive. And all of these things are coming together at exactly the right time for the Rams.
For sure. And all those are the big pieces to the Rams Super Bowl puzzle. And specifically as it pertains to this team, you had this year to kind of evaluate and assess what you had and also kind of look at this market. I think Burns, interesting thing about him is he's 25. He turns 26 in April. He's someone that you're probably going to have to pay around $90 million for in an extension. And I think really it's almost like a pipe dream in the sense that he's probably going to get franchise tag, right? So is he going to be available? Look, the likelihood of that is kind of low because the Panthers are probably going to keep him. And then you consider the fact that, are you all in on him? Then you look at other big-time options like a Danielle Hunter, who's older, right? He's like 31 years old. Do you really want to give him around $20 million a year at that age? Maybe if you think that the rest of his prime aligns with Stafford and Kupp and Aaron Donald, maybe you consider going that route. Or do you go the cheaper options? And this is, to me, what I find a little more intriguing. And the first guy I want to bring up today is Bryce Huff, who played with the New York Jets last season. If you look at his win rate, it was actually better than Brian Burns last season. And if you look at some of his other numbers, this is someone that can provide a lot of value. The thing with him is he's really a specialist when it comes to getting to the quarterback. Not great against the run, but this is someone who could be had at a much cheaper rate, around $58 million on a 4-year deal. So I think maybe you kind of go for someone like that. You get a little more value.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think that the ability to figure out how you want to attack this next window is going to determine which of these directions you go, right? Because what you said, I think, is the most important thing. Am I willing to shove all of my chips into the center of the table and basically be on a timeline, not just with Kupp and Donald and Stafford, but add more players that are on a similar timeline, right? That the timeline, let's be optimistic. Let's say the window for that group is 3 more years, okay? And that's probably being really optimistic. So it's probably closer to 2. Do you want to add more players, like you're talking about, that are on a similar 2-year timeline with primes, or do you want to try to kick that open a little bit more and maybe have a group of players that could be the next group of guys when those other guys start to age out a little bit? That's the question that you have to ask yourself if you're Sean McVay. Do I want to go cheaper and younger and maybe a little longer? Or do I want to take a big swing? Do I want a Von Miller? Do I want an Odell Beckham Jr., somebody that's much closer to the end than you are to the beginning, but it gives me a better chance in the short term? That's the calculus that the front office and the coaching staff needs to execute.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think when you look at it from that perspective, it's kind of like, okay, are we going to fit this need with a player that we feel can provide that level of production at that price that's more of a bigger brand name like a Von Miller type? Or do we kind of dig deeper into the actual production and realize that, okay, the production doesn't necessarily match the reputation, right? I think Burns is viewed, because so many people have heard that name and seen his flashes, as a player that is this elite pass rusher. I'm not so sure he's truly as elite as people want to make him out to be. I mean, look at Bryce Huff. I bring my facts to the fight. Pass rush win rate, 23.1% for Huff last season. If you look at Burns, his pass rush win rate was at 11.6%. So if you want an animal, they can just get to the QB at will, but it's not as great as someone that can deal with the rush. I mean, Huff might be your guy at a much more discounted rate. So that's a name, but there's another name we're going to talk about too. Another value, not kind of quite. It's funny to call guys are getting 50, 60 minute bargain, but we're going to talk about another name that I think Rams fans should definitely familiarize themselves with. That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
Passion, drive, and patience. That's what brings home the winning trophy. It is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and a whole lot more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors, they've got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you are looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into MVP and bring home a big win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday, free and available wherever you get your podcast. Now, Travis, we're going to pick back up on the edge rusher conversation. The third guy I find very interesting is Josh Uche, the New England Patriots last season. Uche, he's someone that is another specialist. Not great against the run, a pass rush win rate of 16.4%. He's someone, if you guys, a pass rush grade of 83.8. I mean, you compare it to Hassan Reddick, 80.4. So he's someone that if you're looking for a pure specialist, they can get to the QB, he's another viable option.
Yeah, it's funny because I guess this comes back to more of a philosophical question than anything else. Do I want some guys that can go get the quarterback, right? And what everything that I've ever been told from anybody that's ever played in this league is you build your team inside your division and then you go from there, right? You need to compete in your division and you need to be built to beat the other three teams. So what are we talking about specifically with the 49ers? You need somebody that can at least deal with Christian McCaffrey. You're not going to stop him, but you at least have to make him work for whatever it is he's getting. So do I need more guys to get to Brock Purdy and Geno Smith and Kyler Murray? I don't know. It feels like they're able to do that at a relatively level. Do I need to get better overall defensively and add some guys that are defensive players as opposed to defensive specialists? If Aaron Donald is there, you're always going to have decent pressure on the quarterback. I think Byron Young and Kobe Turner speak to that a little bit, that they were able to combine for 17 sacks between the two of them. I think if you get a guy that's in there that can get to the quarterback, that number goes up. But can he do the other things that you need him to do? And again, this comes back. Do I want the defense as a whole to get better, or do I want to get to the quarterback more? I think that's the decision that you have to make. If you're Chris Shula, who's the defensive coordinator right now, if that's Sean McVay, if that's Les Snead, do I need somebody to do one thing really, really well, or do I need to make this group better? And I think that's going to kind of define where it is you go in this offseason.
Yeah, and I think if you look at where he's at, just kind of stepping up and wreaking havoc during obvious passing situations, that is a role that this Rams team needs. As far as, look, I mean, you talk about the secondary, it's very difficult for the secondary when you have to cover without getting very much pressure. So I think Uche is someone that makes a lot of sense. I definitely think that he's not the brand name as the Josh Allens or the Brian Burns, but sometimes I think that definitely is where you really need to go, because you still need to get a cornerback. You still have some other money. You still need to bring back Kevin Dotson, right? So I don't think that unless it's someone that they're for certain is going to be that elite category type. I mean, a TJ Watt type. I mean, someone who's like that, I'm not comfortable just breaking the bank on him.
I'm with you, and I'm glad you brought up Dotson again, because Steve Avila mentioned the same thing to us the other night. He's like, yeah, we need to make sure that Kevin Dotson comes back. Like, he's already figured out how to lobby for his fellow teammates. He's been in the league for 1 year. It's incredibly important, and you're right. If like, where do you want to allocate this money? Do you want to make your offense, which is already very, very good, better, more consistent, more stable with that offensive line? Or do you want to try to improve the defense, the unit that was, of the three units, they're second? The special teams unit, of course, is the third unit that's got to get a lot better as well. But I think you're right. It's choices. This is what makes a salary cap league so much, more challenging than, we talk about with baseball. You want to add Ohtani? Add Ohtani. You want to add Yamamoto? Add Yamamoto. That just keep throwing dollars onto the pile, and it doesn't really matter. It's a different animal inside the NFL. You got to make your choices. And I think that Kevin Dotson needs to be near the top of that list.
100%. And also, too, Byron Young is going to get better in his second season. He is going to improve. So kind of my whole point of all this is it's okay to go with the generic brand. I mean, the Kirkland brand coffee is made in the same factory as the Starbucks brand coffee, right? And they taste the same. It's about getting the same value at the end. So I'm all for that.
I would challenge anybody. If I give you a bottle of Grey Goose and a bottle of Kirkland brand vodka, tell me which is which. You will not get it right. I guarantee it. So yeah, I'm with you. Kirkland all day, except for dad's shoes.
For sure. And I think the Kirkland brand shirts are fire, man. It's like a trend now. Like, they're tough to get. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. You can follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers. Until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.